Every fairy tale promises the same lie. Endure the suffering, survive the trials, and love will find you. It will be beautiful when it comes gentle hands, soft words, a prince who sees past your flaws to the treasure beneath. All you have to do is wait, be good, be patient, and eventually, the universe will reward your faithfulness with salvation wrapped in starlight and promise. But when you've spent your entire life as a burden no one wanted, when your own pack looks at you with that particular mixture of pity and disgust reserved for the broken, you learn a different truth. Salvation doesn't come gently. It comes howling through a blizzard, wearing the face of a predator, and it doesn't ask permission before it devours everything you thought you knew about yourself. I learned that truth the night I followed a wolf's song into a storm that should have killed me. The night I discovered that sometimes, the monster in the darkness is the only honest thing in a world built on beautiful lies. My name is Morgan Gray, and this is the story of how I died in a snowstorm and woke up in a nightmare that taught me what it means to truly live. This is the story of how blindness became sight, how a howl became a language, and how the thing I feared most became the only thing worth having. They say omegas are blessed by the moon goddess, meant to be cherished, protected, treasured above all others. They lied about that too. Chapter 1. The omega no one wanted. The morning they decided to cast me out, the pack house smelled like cinnamon rolls and disappointment. I could always smell emotions before I understood them. Fear had a metallic tang, like copper pennies dissolving on your tongue. Anger burned like smoke from green wood, acrid, choking, impossible to ignore. But disappointment smelled sweet and rotten at the same time, like fruit left too long in the sun, fermenting into something that made your stomach turn. That's what filled the air as I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers tracing the chipped edge of my plate, counting the beats of silence that stretched between my father's carefully measured breaths. "Morgan," he said finally, and I hated how gentle he made his voice. Gentleness from my father was never kindness. It was the mercy you'd show a dying animal before you put it down. "The council has made their decision." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways over my 23 years of existence. I was blind. I was weak. I couldn't shift. And worst of all, the sin that made me truly unforgivable in a world where an omega's only value lay in their ability to bear strong pups. My womb was as barren as winter ground. "They've given us until the new moon," my father continued. 3 days to make arrangements. Arrangements. Such a polite word for exile, for cutting off the diseased limb before it poisoned the whole body. "Where's Sarah?" I asked, because my sister's absence was louder than my father's words. Sarah, who could shift into a wolf so beautiful that visiting alphas would stop mid-conversation just to watch her run. Sarah, whose amber eyes held all the fire and life that mine lacked. Sarah, who was probably upstairs packing her bags for the mating ceremony with the beta from the northern pack, the same beta who'd once told me I had a pretty smile before he learned what I was. "Your sister is with her intended," my father said, and I heard the pride in his voice, the relief. At least one daughter had turned out right. She wanted to be here. But she's busy being everything I'm not," I finished for him. "It's fine, Father, I understand." And I did. I'd always understood. In a world where strength was survival and weakness was death, I was a liability Grey Pack could no longer afford. The last 3 winters had been brutal. Game was scarce. Neighboring packs were getting aggressive, testing our borders, looking for any sign of vulnerability. A blind, barren omega who couldn't even shift to defend herself. That was vulnerability incarnate. "The council has offered compensation," my father said, and now his voice carried that rot sweet smell again. "There's a position at the northern border station. They need someone to manage the records, organize supplies. It's indoor work. Safe. You'd have a room, meals, a small stipend." "A cage," I said softly. "You're offering me a prettier cage. Morgan, what happens when they realize I'm more trouble than I'm worth?" I asked, still tracing that chip in the plate, following its jagged edge like a map to nowhere. "What happens when the next harsh winter comes, and they need to cut costs? Who protects the blind omega then?" Silence. Because we both knew the answer. No one. No one protects the broken ones when survival gets difficult. "You could stay," my father said, but the words were hollow. "If you took the suppressants. If you never went into heat again. if you essentially ceased being an omega. The council said they'd consider letting me exist as nothing, I interrupted. Not omega, not beta, not anything. Just a ghost in the house, a reminder of your failure. Don't say that. Why not? I stood, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. It's what everyone thinks. You know how many times I've heard the whispers. Such a shame about Gray's firstborn. The moon goddess must have been angry that night. Bad blood comes out eventually. My fingers found the wall, following its familiar texture toward my room. I'd memorized every inch of this house. 13 steps to the stairs, turn left, 16 steps down the hallway, third door on the right. My world was made of numbers and patterns, distances measured in heartbeats, and breath counts. Morgan, please. I'll be gone before the new moon, I said. You can tell the council I went willingly. That way, Sarah's mating won't be complicated by my presence. I heard him start to protest, then stop. Because what could he say? That he loved me? Maybe he did, in the way you love something you're obligated to care for. But love without respect is just pity wearing a prettier mask. I made it to my room before the tears came. The books were what I'd miss most. My room was small, barely large enough for a bed, a desk, and the shelves that lined every available wall. Sarah had once asked why I kept so many books when I couldn't read them. She didn't understand that my fingers could read just fine, tracing the braille letters that kind Mrs. Ashford from the human settlement had helped me emboss into the pages. I ran my hands over the spines now, saying goodbye to friends who'd kept me company through endless lonely nights. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights. Stories of women who society deemed unsuitable, who found love anyway, or at least found themselves. Fairy tales, my mother would have called them. My mother, who'd died bringing Sarah into the world, whose last words were supposedly a prayer that at least one daughter would be strong. The moon goddess had answered, just not the daughter she'd meant. Still drowning in your fantasies, I see. I didn't turn around. I knew Vera's voice, my father's beta. The woman who'd basically raised Sarah and me after mother died. The woman who'd never quite forgiven me for surviving when my mother hadn't. Just packing, I said neutrally. The northern station is a good opportunity, Vera said, stepping into my room uninvited. Better than you deserve, if I'm being honest. When are you ever anything but honest, Vera? She laughed, sharp and brittle. You want honesty? Fine, you're a drain on this pack. Every resource spent keeping you fed and sheltered is a resource taken from wolves who actually contribute. Your father is too soft to say it. But someone needs to. The pack will be stronger without you. I carefully placed my copy of Jane Eyre in my bag. I know. Do you? She moved closer. I could smell her pine and aggression, the scent of a wolf who'd fought for her position and held it through sheer viciousness. Do you know how many times I've watched your sister cry because someone compared her to you? Poor Sarah, saddled with the blind sister. Poor Sarah, whose mating ceremony will always be overshadowed by pity for the Grey family curse. Sarah never cried about me, I said quietly. She barely thinks about me at all. Smart girl. Is there a point to this visit, Vera? Or did you just come to make sure I understand how unwanted I am? The point, she said, her voice dropping to something dangerous, is that if you're not gone by the new moon, I'll make sure the council's decision becomes permanent. The northern station is charity. But there are other ways to handle problems that won't leave. Do you understand me? A threat, crystal clear and sharp as winter ice. Perfectly, I said. She left without another word, her footsteps heavy and satisfied. The beta had made her position clear. I wasn't just being exiled, I was being erased. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the house settle around me, listening to Sarah's soft breathing from her room down the hall. My sister, who'd never asked to be compared to me. My sister, who probably did feel relief that I'd soon be gone. I couldn't blame her. How do you love someone who's only ever been defined by absence? No sight, no shift, no future. Somewhere around midnight, I gave up on sleep and wrapped myself in my heavy cloak, the one luxury my father had insisted on, lined with rabbit fur and thick enough to withstand the mountain cold. If I was leaving in 3 days anyway, what did it matter if I took one last walk through the territory I'd never see again? The night air hit my face like a slap, sharp and clean. Late autumn in the mountains meant frost already glittered on everything, turning the world into something crystalline and treacherous. I moved carefully, following the path I'd walked 1,000 times down the porch steps, across the yard, toward the eastern border where the pine forest grew so thick even wolves had trouble navigating it. This was my place. The spot where no one looked for me because no one expected the blind girl to venture into the woods alone. But I'd been coming here since I was 12, since I'd first realized that solitude was better than pity. The trees here spoke in whispers, pine needles rustling, branches creaking, nocturnal creatures going about their secret lives. Out here, I wasn't broken. I was just another creature trying to survive the night. I settled against my usual tree, an ancient pine with roots that had pushed up through the soil, creating a natural seat. The bark was rough against my back, familiar and grounding, and that's when I heard it. A howl. Not the familiar howls of my pack, who sang to each other in voices I'd known all my life. This was different, deeper. The sound seemed to bypass my ears entirely and resonate in my chest, in my bones, in some part of me that had been sleeping my entire life. It was beautiful, and it was the loneliest sound I'd ever heard. Without thinking, without planning, I stood up. My fingers found the tree trunk, using it to orient myself. The howl had come from the north, deeper into the forest, toward the unclaimed territories where pack wolves didn't venture because there was nothing there but wilderness and danger. I should have gone back to the house. A blind Omega, alone in the forest at night, following a strange wolf's call. It was suicidal, but something in that howl spoke to the emptiness inside me. Something recognized, something like calling to like, so I followed it. The forest floor was treacherous roots and rocks and fallen branches waiting to trip me, but I'd spent years learning to read the world through my feet, through subtle changes in temperature and sound that told me when to step carefully. I moved slowly, methodically, following that howl like it was a rope pulling me forward. It called again, closer now. And I answered without meaning to. Not with a howl, because I couldn't shift, but with a soft sound in my throat. A response. An acknowledgement. I hear you. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow. A storm was coming. I should turn back. But the howl called again, and I kept walking, kept following, kept moving toward something I couldn't name and couldn't resist. I didn't know then that I was following a white wolf through the darkness. I didn't know that the storm about to hit would change everything. I didn't know that by morning, Morgan Gray would be dead, and something else entirely would be born. Chapter 2. The Blizzard and the Beast. The snow began as a whisper, tiny flakes that kissed my cheeks like cold promises. Within minutes, it became a roar. I'd been in mountain blizzards before. I knew the signs. The way the wind suddenly changed direction, circling like a predator. The drop in temperature so sharp it made your lungs ache. The specific quality of silence that preceded nature's violence. But I'd always been safely inside when those signs appeared. Never alone in the forest. Miles from home, chasing a phantom howl that had gone quiet. The smart thing would have been to find shelter immediately. Dig into a snowbank, cover myself with pine branches, wait out the storm. Survival 101 for mountain wolves, drilled into us from childhood. But the smart thing assumed you wanted to survive. And somewhere between leaving my father's house and following that lonely howl into the wilderness, I'd stopped being sure that I did. What was I surviving for? Another decade of pity? A life at the northern border station? Organizing supplies for wolves who'd whisper about the blind Omega when they thought I couldn't hear? Growing old in a small room, reading my embossed books, never touching another person, never being touched, never being anything but the tragedy people mentioned in passing? The wind screamed, and I let it push me forward. My cloak whipped around my body, the fur lining doing nothing against cold this vicious. Ice crystals formed on my eyelashes, not that it mattered, since my useless eyes saw nothing anyway. The world was sound and sensation, wind shrieking, snow stinging exposed skin, the forest groaning under winter's assault. I'd lost the path 20 minutes ago. Now I was just walking, one foot in front of the other, because stopping meant lying down, and lying down meant freezing, and freezing meant the howl cut through the storm like a knife through silk. Closer. So much closer. Almost on top of me. I turned toward it, stumbling. my numb feet catching on something hidden beneath the snow. I fell hard, my hands plunging into powder so cold it burned. For a moment I just knelt there, gasping, ice coating my lungs with every breath. Please, I whispered to the storm, to the howl, to whatever deity might be listening. Please, if you're real, if this means something. The growl froze the words in my throat. Low, rumbling. Close enough that I felt the vibration through the ground beneath my knees. A wolf. A massive wolf. Judging by the depth of that growl. And I was on my knees in front of it, defenseless, unable to shift, unable to run, unable to do anything but wait for teeth to find my throat. This was how I died, then. Not slowly fading in some border station, but here, feeding a predator in a blizzard. There was a certain poetry to it. At least it would be quick. I lifted my chin, exposing my throat. Submission. Acceptance. Go ahead, I said to the growling darkness. I'm not afraid. That was a lie. I was terrified. But I was also so tired of being afraid that terror and exhaustion had collapsed into something like peace. The growl stopped. Silence, except for the wind. I waited for impact, for pain, for the end. Instead, I felt heat. Massive heat, radiating from a body that had moved close enough to touch. The wolf, because what else could generate that much warmth, was standing directly in front of me. I could smell it now, cutting through the storm. Pine and snow and something wild and clean that made every hair on my body stand up. Not fear, though. Something else. Something I had no name for. I followed your howl, I said, because dying in silence felt wrong. It was beautiful. The loneliest sound I've ever heard. I thought my voice cracked. I thought maybe you were like me. Alone. Unwanted. I thought maybe what? That a wolf would understand? That a predator would offer comfort? How pathetic was I, that even facing death, I was still desperate for connection. Hot breath hit my face. The wolf was close enough now that I could feel each exhale, could sense the size of it bigger than any pack wolf I'd encountered. The scent grew stronger, and beneath the wild smell was something else, something that made my omega instincts stir for the first time in years. Alpha. This was an alpha wolf. A powerful one. And I'd just offered my throat to it like a fool. I can't shift, I whispered, not sure why I was explaining. I can't defend myself. I can't run. I'm blind. I can't even see you. So if you're going to kill me, please just make it quick. The wolf made a sound. Not a growl. Not a howl. Something between a whine and a rumble. Like it was confused. Then I felt teeth, and my heart stopped. But the teeth didn't tear. They closed around the fur collar of my cloak, gentle as a mother carrying a pup. The wolf actually lifted me until I was standing on trembling legs. Then it moved, positioning itself beside me, its shoulder pressing against my hip. The message was clear even to my shocked brain. Hold on. My fingers tangled in thick white fur, I somehow knew, though I couldn't have said how. The texture was different from pack wolves, softer and denser. My hands disappeared into that coat as the wolf began to move, guiding me through the storm. We walked. The wolf chose each step carefully, its body a warm anchor in the screaming wind. When I stumbled, it stopped, waiting for me to regain balance. When the snow got too deep, it moved ahead, breaking trail, then circled back to collect me. It was saving me. This massive alpha wolf, who should have seen me as prey or threat, or at best an annoyance, was saving my life. Why? I asked the question to the storm, not expecting an answer. Why are you helping me? The wolf made that confused sound again, and kept walking. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only cold, and fur, and the steady presence of the wolf beside me. My legs had gone numb. My face felt like it belonged to someone else. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore, even buried in all that warm fur. I was dying. The wolf's help had bought me time, but not enough. You couldn't survive a blizzard like this, not exposed, not for this long. I'm sorry, I whispered to the white wolf. I'm slowing you down. You should leave me, save yourself. The wolf stopped so abruptly I stumbled into its side. It turned, and I felt its massive head press against my chest, pushing me backward. I sat down hard in the snow, confused, as the wolf circled me once, twice, 3 times. Then it lay down, curling its enormous body around me like a living fortress. The relief from the wind was immediate and overwhelming. The wolf's body blocked the worst of the storm, creating a pocket of almost warmth. Its tail curved around to cover my legs, its head rested near my shoulder, and its breathing deep and steady became the only sound in my universe. "Thank you," I breathed into white fur. My arms wrapped around the wolf's neck, seeking warmth, seeking comfort, seeking something I'd never found in 23 years of life. The wolf rumbled, not a growl, something softer, almost like a purr. Could wolves purr? I was too cold to care. I burrowed deeper into that impossible warmth, and the wolf shifted to accommodate me, tucking me more securely against its chest. "You're going to regret this," I mumbled, consciousness starting to slip. "When the storm clears, and you realize you saved a useless blind Omega, you should have left me. Everyone leaves me eventually." The wolf's rumble grew louder, almost indignant. I felt its head move, felt its breath on my face again. Then something warm and wet dragged across my frozen cheek. The wolf had licked me. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep, hysterical, exhausted, delirious. "Okay," I said to the darkness pulling me under. "Okay, White Wolf, I'll stay. Just for a little while." The last thing I felt before unconsciousness took me was the wolf adjusting its position, ensuring every inch of my body was covered, protected, warm. The last thing I heard was a sound that might have been a howl, or might have been the storm, or might have been my oxygen-starved brain, making up beautiful lies. But it sounded like a promise. I woke to silence, not the absence of sound, but the specific quality of silence that follows a storm, the world holding its breath, buried under fresh snow, everything muffled and new. I was warm, actually warm, for the first time in hours, days. How long had I been unconscious? And I was moving. My brain struggled to process the information. I was definitely moving, being carried, but not in someone's arms. I was draped across something broad and furred, and the wolf, the white wolf, was carrying me. I was lying across its back like a sack of grain, my arms dangling on one side, my legs on the other, bouncing slightly with each of its massive steps. "You're awake," a voice said. I jerked so hard I nearly slid off the wolf's back. Human hands caught me, steadying me. "Easy," the voice said. Male, deep, with an accent I couldn't place. "You're safe. Don't move too quickly, you've been hypothermic for hours." "Who?" My throat was raw, my voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" "Someone who owes you an explanation," the man said. "But first, let's get you somewhere warm. Can you hold on for a few more minutes?" I realized he was walking beside the wolf, one hand resting on my back to keep me stable. The wolf, my white wolf, made that rumbling sound again, and the man responded with something that sounded almost like a chuckle. "Yes, I know you've got her," the man said. "I'm just making sure." He was talking to the wolf, like it could understand him. "Where are we going?" I managed to ask. "My home," the man said. "It's not far now. You'll be safe there, I promise." Promises. The wolf had made me a promise too, or I'd dreamed it had. Nothing made sense. Why was there a man in the middle of nowhere, after a blizzard? Why was he helping me? And why did the white wolf— "The wolf," I said suddenly. "Where's the white wolf, the one who saved me?" Silence. "The kind that feels heavy. You're riding on the white wolf," the man said finally, carefully. "No, I mean before, during the storm. There was an alpha wolf, white fur, massive. It kept me alive." "Where did it go?" Another weighted silence. "Rest," the man said, his voice strange. "We'll talk when you're warm and safe." Something in his tone told me he was lying. Or not lying. Exactly. Avoiding. But I was too exhausted, too cold drunk, too confused to push. So I laid my cheek against the white wolf's fur, and let myself be carried toward whatever came next. Behind me, I heard the man mutter something under his breath, too quiet for normal ears, but my hearing had always been sharper than most. It sounded like, "She doesn't know." How does she not know? But that made no sense. Didn't know what? The The wolf beneath me rumbled again, and I felt the vibration through my whole body. Comforting. Protective. My fingers tightened in white fur, and I made a decision. Whatever was happening, whoever these people were, they'd saved my life. That counted for something. Even if nothing else in my life had ever counted for anything. The wolf's steady gait rocked me like a lullaby, and I let the darkness take me again. This time, I wasn't afraid. Chapter 3, The Castle of Contradictions. I woke to softness. After years of a thin mattress on a wooden frame, after hours on frozen ground, the sensation of genuine softness was so foreign it took me several confused seconds to identify it. Blankets. Thick, heavy blankets that smelled like cedar and something wild. A mattress that seemed to cradle my body rather than merely support it. And warmth. Blessed, overwhelming warmth that made my fingers and toes ache as circulation returned. I was alive. Against all logic and probability, I was alive. You're awake. The voice from before the man who'd walked beside the white wolf. Except now he was closer. Maybe sitting in a chair near the bed. I could hear the creak of wood as he shifted his weight. Where am I? My voice was still rough, my throat raw from breathing frozen air. My home, he said simply. You've been unconscious for almost 8 hours. I was beginning to worry. 8 hours. The blizzard, the wolf, the impossible rescue, it felt like a dream, like something my frost-addled brain had invented. Except I was here, wherever here was, and this stranger had apparently been watching over me while I slept. That should have terrified me. Strange man, unknown location, vulnerable Omega, every instinct should have been screaming danger. But I didn't smell threat. I smelled pine and old stone and something else, something that made my Omega senses stir with interest rather than fear. Alpha, definitely. But not aggressive, not predatory, curious maybe. And something that felt almost like concern? The white wolf, I said, because that was the important thing, the thing I needed to understand. Where is it? I need to thank it, I need to. The wolf is fine, the man interrupted gently. It's resting. The storm took a toll, but it saved me. I struggled to sit up, the blankets pooling around my waist. It should have left me to die. Why didn't it? Why would an alpha wolf risk itself for you? The man's voice carried a strange note. Why do you assume you weren't worth saving? The question caught me off guard. Because I'm not. I'm a blind Omega who can't shift. I'm useless. Everyone knows that. Everyone is wrong. The certainty in those 2 words made my breath catch. No pity, no platitude. Just flat contradiction. Like he was correcting a basic error in mathematics. You don't know me, I said carefully. No, he agreed. But I know what you did. You walked into a blizzard alone. You followed a howl no one else would have heard, or if they heard it, they would have ignored. You offered your throat to what you thought was a predator, not out of fear but out of, what? Kinship? Recognition? Insanity, I supplied. The word you're looking for is insanity. He laughed, a genuine sound that seemed surprised out of him. Perhaps. Or perhaps you recognized something true in that howl. Something lonely calling to something lonely. My hands fisted in the blankets. Who are you? Someone who understands loneliness, he said quietly. Someone who, I apologize. I haven't even asked your name. He paused, and I got the distinct impression he was choosing his words carefully. You can call me Lindia. Lindia. Not a name I recognized from any of the regional packs. The accent I'd noticed earlier was clearer now, educated, refined, with the particular cadence of the Northern Territories. Old blood probably, wealth, certainly, which raised the question, what was someone like that doing in the unclaimed wilderness? Morgan, I offered. Morgan Gray. Gray. He said it thoughtfully. From the Eastern Mountain Pack? My stomach dropped. You know my pack? I know of most packs in these territories. The Grays have a reputation. Your father is well respected. Was. Past tense as far as I was concerned. I'm being exiled, I said flatly, because there was no point in pretending. They gave me 3 days to leave. I took a walk before I left and got caught in the storm. That's all. That's all? Lindia's voice sharpened. Your pack is casting out an omega? That's against… I'm defective, I interrupted. Blind, barren, can't shift. The pack is struggling. They can't afford dead weight. It's practical. It's monstrous. The anger in his voice startled me. Not directed at me, directed on my behalf. When was the last time someone had been angry for me rather than at me? It is what it is, I said, uncomfortable with his defense. I don't need pity. Good, because I'm not offering any. He stood, and I heard him move toward what sounded like a fireplace. The crackle of flames confirmed it. I'm offering you a choice. What kind of choice? You can rest here until you're strong enough to travel, then leave for wherever you were planning to go. The northern border station, was it? Of course he'd know. Pack gossip traveled fast. Or you can stay. I almost laughed. Stay? Here? Why would you? You don't even know me. No, he agreed. But I'd like to. And I think you might want to know me too. Or at least, you wanted to know the wolf. The wolf. Always back to the wolf. Are you saying the wolf is yours? I asked carefully. Like a pet. Or a bonded. I'm saying, Lindia interrupted. And now his voice carried weight, importance, like he was revealing something significant. That things are not always what they seem. You, for instance. Your pack sees a blind, broken omega. But last night in the storm, I saw something entirely different. What did you see? Courage, he said simply. Real courage, not the bravado wolves perform for each other. You were terrified and you walked into the storm anyway. You thought death was coming, and you offered it your throat with dignity. That's not weakness, Morgan. That's strength most wolves will never possess. My throat tightened. Pretty words. True words, he corrected. And I'm not asking you to stay forever. Just stay for a while. Rest, recover. Let yourself be somewhere where you're not measured against impossible standards. It was too good. Too perfect. Strange man rescues dying omega, offers sanctuary, asks nothing in return. That wasn't how the world worked. What do you want from me? I asked bluntly. Nobody helps for nothing. What's the cost? Silence. Long enough that I thought I'd offended him. Then, company, he said quietly. I want company. Someone to talk to who doesn't see me as… He stopped himself. I'm alone here. Solitary by necessity, not choice. And last night when I heard you in the storm, when I realized you'd followed. He trailed off. I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in 3 years. That's the cost. Your company. Your conversation. That's all. 3 years alone. I understood that kind of loneliness. The kind that carved you hollow. The kind that made you take stupid risks just to feel something real. Why are you alone? I asked. That, he said, with a hint of wry humor, is a longer story. One I'll tell you, but not today. Today, you need food, more rest, and probably questions answered about where exactly you are. As if summoned by his words, my stomach growled audibly. When had I last eaten? Before the pack meeting yesterday morning, Lindia chuckled. I'll take that as acceptance. Stay there, I'll bring you something. Wait, I said as I heard him move toward the door. Just tell me one thing. The white wolf. Will I see it again? Another loaded pause. Yes, Lindia said finally. I promise you'll see the wolf again. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the softness and warmth, trying to piece together what had just happened. The food, when it came, was simple but perfect. Venison stew, dark bread, and something sweet that tasted like honey cakes. Lindia talked while I ate, his voice painting pictures of where I was. A castle, he called it, though that seemed grandiose. More like a fortified manor, he amended. Built into the mountain itself. It's been in my family for generations, meant as a retreat. Somewhere to go when the world becomes… He paused. Too much. You live here alone? Not entirely. There are others who help maintain the place. Staff, I suppose you'd call them. But they're discreet. You won't see much of them. Because I'm blind? Because they value privacy, he corrected gently. As do I. This place, it's a sanctuary. For myself and for anyone who needs one. I soaked bread in the stew, considering. How many people have you rescued from blizzards? You're the first, he admitted. Usually I'm better about sensing storms coming. I would have stayed inside, but I heard. He stopped. The howl? I supplied. Yes. The howl. Why did you howl? The question came out before I could stop it. If you were safe inside, why call out into a storm? Silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. Because sometimes the loneliness is worse than the storm. My heart clenched. I knew that feeling. I understand, I whispered. I know you do, Lindia said. That's why you came. We sat in comfortable silence while I finished eating. It should have been awkward, stranger and stranger, unknown location, bizarre circumstances. But instead, it felt natural, like we were two pieces of a puzzle that happened to fit, even if we didn't understand the whole picture yet. Can I ask you something? Lindia said eventually. You've been asking me things all morning. Fair. Can I ask you something personal? I set down the empty bowl. Go ahead. Last night when you thought the wolf was going to kill you, you said you weren't afraid. Was that true? I considered lying, then decided against it. No. I was terrified. But I was also relieved. That sounds insane, but I've spent my whole life being afraid. Afraid of being a burden. Afraid of being cast out. Afraid of dying alone and forgotten. And in that moment, facing actual death, I realized at least it would be over. At least I'd know how the story ended. And now I'm in a castle with a stranger who saved my life. Eating venison stew, wondering if this is real, or if I'm still freezing to death in the woods. And this is some beautiful hallucination my brain invented, to make dying easier. Lindia laughed. A rich sound that seemed to fill the room. I assure you, this is real. Though I understand the skepticism. Your life changed rather dramatically in the span of 12 hours. That's one way to put it. Morgan, he said, and his voice turned serious. I meant what I said. You can stay as long as you need. No obligations, no expectations, just stay, rest, heal, be somewhere safe. Safe. Such a simple word, such an impossible promise. Why do I feel like there's something you're not telling me? I asked quietly. Because there is, he admitted. Several things, actually. But I need you to trust me enough to hear them. And trust isn't built in a morning. So I'm asking you to stay. To give me time to explain properly. Explain what? Why the white wolf saved you, he said softly. Why it couldn't let you die in that storm. Why you following that howl felt like. He stopped, took a breath. Why it mattered. My heart was beating too fast. Lindia, what are you? Stay, he said again. Please. Give me a week. 1 week to show you that this place, this situation, might be exactly what you need. What we both need. I should have said no. Should have demanded answers immediately. Should have been more cautious, more skeptical. But the memory of white fur and gentle teeth, of being carried through a storm, of a howl that had called to something deep inside me, it all pointed to one impossible truth. I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. 1 week, I agreed. I couldn't see him, but I swear I could feel Lindia smile. 1 week, he echoed. Thank you. Chapter 4. The Library and the Truth. The castle revealed itself to me in layers over the next 3 days. Not through sight that would never be mine, but through sound and scent and the particular texture of spaces. The main hall where I took my meals had high ceilings that made voices echo, and walls of smooth stone that held the cold like a memory. The corridors were wide enough for 3 people to walk abreast, with thick carpets that muffled footsteps but couldn't quite hide the age of the floorboards beneath. And there were the howls. Every night, just after moonrise, I'd hear it, that same lonely call that had drawn me into the blizzard. It came from somewhere above, maybe the castle ramparts or a high tower. Each time, something in my chest would tighten, responding to the sound in ways I couldn't name and didn't understand. Lindia never mentioned the howls. He'd appear each morning for breakfast, asking how I'd slept, telling me stories about the castle's history, treating me like a guest rather than a charity case. But he always left before sunset, murmuring excuses about evening duties, and I wouldn't see him again until dawn. The staff he'd mentioned remained invisible. Food appeared, dishes disappeared, my room was cleaned while I was elsewhere, but I never encountered the people doing it. Once I could have sworn I heard whispers in a language I didn't recognize, but when I called out, only silence answered. It should have felt sinister. Instead, it felt considerate. Like everyone was trying very hard not to overwhelm the blind Omega who'd stumbled into their sanctuary. On the fourth morning, Lindia arrived with an announcement. "I want to show you something," he said over breakfast. "If you're feeling strong enough." I'd regained most of my strength, though my fingers and toes still ached from the frostbite. "What is it?" "A surprise," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Come on. I promise you'll like it." He offered his arm, a courtesy I'd learned to accept over the past few days. Lindia was careful about touch, never presuming, always asking permission through gesture or word. It was such a stark contrast to my pack, where people either avoided touching me entirely or grabbed me without warning. Like I was an object to be moved rather than a person to be respected. We walked through corridors I was beginning to map in my mind. Left from my room, down the main stairs, past the Great Hall, then right toward the eastern wing I hadn't explored yet. The air here smelled different, drier, with an undercurrent of something familiar I couldn't quite place. "Close your eyes," Lindia said. "They don't work anyway." "Humor me," I complied, letting him guide me forward. I heard a door open heavy, from the sound of it, and then we stepped into a space that made my breath catch. Books. The smell hit me like a wave. Old paper, leather bindings, dust and ink, and knowledge. Thousands of books, from the way the scent filled the air. "You can open your eyes now," Lindia said softly. I did, uselessly, but the gesture felt right. "This is a library," he confirmed. "One of the largest private collections in the Northern Territories. My family has been gathering books for generations. Histories, philosophies, sciences, stories, everything we could preserve." My hands reached out instinctively, finding a shelf, trailing across spines. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you said you'd miss your books most," Lindia said. "When you were packing to leave your pack, you mentioned your Braille editions, how much they meant to you." He'd remembered that? From one comment days ago? "Lindia, I can't read these. They're not—" "Wait here," he interrupted. I heard him move deeper into the library, his footsteps confident like he knew exactly where he was going. Shelves creaked, something heavy was lifted, then he was back. "Hold out your hands." I obeyed, and he placed a book in my palms. Not just any book, I could feel the embossed dots immediately. The familiar pattern of Braille under my fingertips. "You have Braille books?" I whispered, not quite believing it. 347 of them, Lindia said, pride evident in his voice. "My mother was blind. She had these made over her lifetime, classics mostly, some histories, poetry collections. They've been sitting here untouched since she died. I think she'd be happy knowing someone was reading them again." My throat closed around words that wouldn't come. His mother. He'd had these made for his mother, and now he was offering them to me like it was nothing, like it wasn't the most precious gift anyone had ever given. "I don't know what to say," I managed finally. "Say you'll use them," Lindia replied. "Say you'll spend time here, reading, being yourself. Not the Omega your pack thought you were. Just Morgan, who loves stories." My fingers traced the title, Wuthering Heights, the same book I'd left behind when I fled my father's house. "Thank you," I breathed. "Lindia, I thank you. You're welcome." His voice was warm, pleased. "There's a reading corner by the fireplace. The chair there was my mother's favorite. I'll leave you to explore?" "Yes, please." I felt him hesitate, like there was something more he wanted to say. Then, "Morgan? I'm glad you came. I'm glad you followed that Howl." "So am I," I admitted, surprising myself with the truth of it. His hand brushed my shoulder, brief, gentle, and then he was gone, leaving me alone with 347 books and a gratitude so fierce it felt like grief. I don't know how long I spent in that library. Hours. Certainly. Maybe the entire day. I read poetry, Dickinson and Rossetti, and names I didn't recognize, but whose words carved themselves into my memory. I found the reading corner Lindia had mentioned, sinking into a chair that smelled faintly of lavender and old wool, his mother's chair, and felt something in my chest finally relax. This was sanctuary. Real sanctuary, not the cage my father had offered. Here, I wasn't broken. I was just blind, and blindness was simply a different way of existing, one his mother had navigated. One that had shaped this library, this collection, this gift. I was so absorbed in a collection of Celtic myths that I almost missed the sound. Claws on stone, clicking, getting closer. I froze. The book still in my hands. The castle was supposed to be safe. Lindia had promised. The wolf walked into the library like it owned the place. I knew it was the white wolf immediately. The size, the particular quality of its presence, the way the air seemed to shift around it, and the scent, pine and snow, and that wild, clean smell that had kept me alive through the blizzard. "Hello," I whispered, setting the book aside carefully. "I was hoping I'd see you again." The wolf made that sound, the rumbling purr that shouldn't be possible but was. It moved closer, and I heard it settle on the floor near my chair with a heavy thump. "Are you allowed to be in here?" I asked. "Do the librarians mind wolves among the books?" Another rumble, almost amused. Slowly, carefully, I reached down. My fingers found thick white fur, and the wolf leaned into the touch like it had been waiting for it. "You saved my life," I said softly, my hands tracing the massive head, the soft ears, the broad skull that spoke of power and age. "I never properly thanked you. I don't even know if you understand me, but thank you. For not leaving me. For caring when no one else did." The wolf went very still under my hands. "Lindia thinks I'm worth saving," I continued, because the wolf was easier to talk to than the man somehow. "He gave me his mother's library. He asks about my day like it matters. And I don't understand why, but I'm grateful. For the first time in my life, I'm somewhere I might actually belong." The wolf made a pained sound, pressing its head more firmly into my lap. "Do you belong to him?" I asked. "Are you his bonded companion? Is that why you're here?" The wolf pulled back, and I felt it shift position. Then something impossible happened. The air changed. Temperature spiked. I heard bones cracking, reforming, the distinctive sound of a shift, but wolves couldn't shift into humans in seconds. It took minutes, was agonizing, left the shifter vulnerable and disoriented. Yet in the space of 3 heartbeats, where there had been a wolf, there was now a man whose breathing was harsh and ragged, a man whose scent was exactly the same as Lindia's. "Oh God," I whispered. "Oh God, I'm sorry," Lindia's voice said, rough and wrecked. "Morgan, I'm so sorry. I should have told you immediately. You're the wolf." My brain was struggling to process. This whole time, the Howl I followed, the one who saved me, who carried me here, that was you. "Yes. And you've been coming to the library every evening," I continued, pieces clicking into place. "That's why you always leave before sunset. You've been spending time with me as the wolf." "Yes." I stood up, my hands trembling. "Why? Why not just tell me?" "Because..." He stopped, started again. "Because when you spoke to the wolf, you were honest in ways you couldn't be with the man. You told the wolf things, true things, about how you felt and what you wanted. And I needed to hear those things. I needed to know who you really were. I searched for words through the shock. "That's manipulation. You lied to me." "I never lied," Lindia said quietly. "I just didn't correct your assumptions. And yes, that's a distinction without much difference." "I know. I'm sorry." The hurt was sharp and surprising. I'd thought, what had I thought? That Lindia was becoming a friend, that the wolf was some separate entity I could trust, that anything about this situation was real. "You said your mother was blind," I said, a thought occurring. "Was that true? Or was that part of the manipulation too?" "That was true," he said firmly. "Every word about her was true. This was her library, her chair. She died 5 years ago, and I miss her every day. But I gestured helplessly at where I thought he was standing. You can shift. You're clearly not cursed or broken, or what are you? Silence. The kind that precedes revelations. I'm the Alpha King, Lindia said quietly. Ruler of the Northern Territories. And I'm cursed in ways that have nothing to do with shifting. The world tilted. Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in all the territories, the one whose authority superseded pack law, whose word was absolute. That's impossible, I breathed. The Alpha King lives in the capital, in the royal palace. Everyone knows that. The Alpha King lives wherever he chooses, Lindia corrected. And I chose here. 3 years ago, when the curse began, I left the capital and came here, to this castle, to isolation, to... His voice broke. To howling at the moon and hoping someone someday would hear me. What curse? I demanded. If you can shift, if you have all this power, what could possibly... I shift into 2 forms, Lindia interrupted. The wolf you met, that's the beast. Beautiful, powerful, pure. Everything an alpha should be. But I also shift into something else. Something monstrous. A creature of rage and violence that I can't control. He moved closer, and I heard the rustle of clothing as he presumably knelt before my chair. 3 years ago, I killed someone, he said, each word careful and deliberate. In my monstrous form, I killed one of my own guards. I didn't mean to. I didn't even remember doing it until I woke covered in blood. That's when I realized I'm not fit to rule. I'm not fit to be around people. So I came here, to this sanctuary my family built, and I've been alone ever since. Except for the staff. There is no staff, Lindia said. Just me. Magic maintains this place, old spells my ancestors wove into the stones. The food, the cleaning, all of it magic. I'm completely alone. 3 years. 3 years of isolation, of loneliness so profound he'd howl at storms. 3 years until a blind Omega stumbled into his territory and heard him. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked, my anger softening into something more complicated. Because I'm selfish, Lindia admitted. Because for the first time in 3 years, I had someone to talk to. Someone who didn't know who I was or what I'd done. Someone who looked at me or didn't look, I suppose, and saw just a person. Not a king, not a monster, just Lindia. And the wolf visits? Those were you wanting. Connection without the weight of words. He finished. Yes. With the wolf you were unguarded. You'd pet me and tell me your fears and your hopes. And I could be there for you without the complication of being human. It was manipulation. It was absolutely manipulation. But it was also the most honest explanation of loneliness I'd ever heard. Show me, I said suddenly. What? The other form. The monster, show me. Morgan, no. If you want me to stay, if you want me to trust you, then show me the truth. All of it. I could hurt you. You won't, I said with certainty I didn't entirely feel. You saved me from a blizzard. You've spent hours with me as the wolf, and you've never once threatened me. Show me the monster, Lindia. Let me decide if it's really as terrible as you think. You're asking me to risk your life. My life was forfeit the moment I walked into that storm, I countered. You gave it back to me. If you want to take it now, that's your choice. But I don't think you will. I think the monster is just another part of you, and I think you've been alone with it for so long that you've forgotten sometimes we're most monstrous when we have no one to be human for. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd refuse. Then, step back, please, give me room. I obeyed, my heart hammering as I heard him move to the center of the library. If anything happens, Lindia said, his voice already changing. If I attack, run. The door is directly behind you. The guards will know. There are no guards. Just run, Morgan. Promise me. I promise. I lied. The transformation was nothing like the smooth shift from wolf to man. This was violent. I heard bones breaking, reforming wrong, heard Lindia's scream turn into something inhuman. The temperature dropped, and a new scent filled the library, blood and fury, and something ancient and wrong. Then the monster growled, and every instinct I had screamed at me to run, but I didn't. Instead, I did the stupidest, bravest thing I'd ever done. I stepped forward, hands outstretched, and whispered, "Hello, Lindia, I'd like to meet you. Don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 5. The Monster and the Promise. The growl that answered me didn't sound like any wolf I'd ever heard. It was deeper, resonant in a way that made my bones vibrate, layered with harmonics that suggested multiple throats, multiple voices twisted into one impossible sound. The scent intensified not just blood and rage but something older, primal. The smell of a predator that had never learned to fear anything because nothing had ever been strong enough to threaten it. I should have been terrified. Every omega instinct in my body was screaming at me to submit, to run, to make myself small and invisible. But beneath the monster's scent, underneath all that fury and wrongness, I could still smell him. Pine and snow, and that particular warmth that meant Lindia, the man who'd given me his mother's library. The wolf who'd kept me alive, through a blizzard. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. And it was only half a lie. The monster moved. I heard claws scraping stone, heard the displacement of air as something massive circled me, evaluating, deciding if I was prey or something else entirely. "Lindia told me about you," I continued, keeping my voice steady even as sweat beaded on my forehead. "He thinks you're uncontrollable, monstrous, something to be hidden away and ashamed of." Another growl, this one almost questioning. "But I think he's wrong," I said. "I think you're just another part of him. A part that's been locked away so long, it's forgotten how to be anything but angry." The circling stopped. The monster was directly in front of me now, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from its body, closer than the wolf had ever been, close enough to kill. I raised my hand slowly, palm out. An offering. A question. "May I whispered. Silence. Breathing that sounded wrong. Too many lungs working in terrible synchronization. Then, hot breath on my palm. The monster was sniffing me, learning my scent the way wolves do, trying to categorize what I was. I waited, patient, non-threatening. The monster made a sound, not a growl this time. Something confused, almost distressed. Then I felt it. Rough fur against my fingertips. Coarser than the wolf's beautiful white coat. Matted in places, like it had been neglected. The monster was letting me touch it. "Hello," I breathed, my fingers exploring carefully. The head was massive, twice the size of the wolf's. The bone structure was wrong, too many ridges, too many angles, like someone had taken a wolf's skull and rebuilt it according to nightmare logic. "I'm Morgan. It's nice to finally meet all of you." The monster went completely still. "You've been alone," I continued, my hands finding what felt like ears, too many of them, positioned incorrectly. "Locked away because Lindia thinks you're dangerous. And maybe you are, maybe you killed that guard. But Lindia killed that guard too, you're both the same person. He just gets to pretend he's not responsible because you wear a different face." A whine. High and broken. Nothing like the confident growl from before. "It's not fair," I said softly, my fingers trailing down to find a neck, a shoulder, a body that seemed to shift and reform under my touch like it couldn't decide what shape it should be. Being the part of him everyone fears. Being the thing he hates most about himself. "You didn't ask for this any more than I asked to be blind." The monster's breathing changed faster, shallower. Was it panicking? "Hey," I soothed, using the same voice I'd used with the wolf during the storm. "It's all right. I see you, both of you, and I'm not afraid." That was when the monster did something that shattered every assumption I'd made. It collapsed. One moment it was standing, and the next it simply fell carefully, deliberately curling its impossible body around me the same way the wolf had during the blizzard. Protecting me. Or maybe protecting itself. The monster was sobbing. I didn't know that monsters could cry. But this one was. I felt moisture on the fur where my hands rested. Felt the body shaking with emotions it had probably never been allowed to express. 3 years of isolation. 3 years of being the thing even Lindia couldn't love. "I'm here," I whispered, sinking down to sit within the circle of its body. "You're not alone anymore. Neither of you are. I don't know how long we stayed like that." The monster crying soundlessly. Me running my hands through its fur. Murmuring soft nonsense words the way you would to a wounded animal. Gradually, the shaking subsided. The breathing evened out. The monster's head came to rest near my lap, heavy and warm and trusting. "Better?" I asked. A sound that might have been agreement. Good. Now I'm going to tell you something important, and I need you to listen. Can you do that? Another sound. Definitely agreement this time. Lindia thinks you're the curse, I said carefully. He thinks the answer is to keep you locked away, to never let you out, to treat you like the enemy. But that's not going to work. You're part of him. You're his rage and his pain, and all the things he won't let himself feel. The more he suppresses you, the stronger you'll get. The more violent. Do you understand? Silence. Then the monster shifted, and I felt something that might have been a nod. What he needs, what you both need, is integration. Not separation. He needs to accept that you exist, that you have a right to exist, and you need to learn that not everything is a threat, that sometimes it's safe to be vulnerable. The monster made a questioning sound. Like now, I said gently. Right now. You're being vulnerable with me. You're letting me touch you, talk to you, see you as something other than a monster. That's good. That's progress. I felt the shift before it happened, the air pressure changing, the temperature rising, the sense of something large becoming something smaller. Not violent this time, but gradual, like the monster was carefully folding itself back into human shape. Within minutes, Lindia was kneeling beside me, breathing hard, still mostly wrapped around me like he couldn't quite let go. You touched it, he said, his voice raw. You touched the monster and it didn't hurt you. He didn't hurt me, I corrected. Not it. He's part of you, Lindia. Stop treating him like a separate entity. He has never let anyone close before. When I shift into that form, I lose control. I rage and destroy, and you were alone, I interrupted. Alone and terrified and convinced you were a monster. Of course you raged. What else was there to do? Lindia made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're insane. You know that? Completely insane, says the man who howled at a blizzard and rescued a dying Omega. Fair point. His arms tightened around me slightly. Morgan, I thank you. I don't know what you did, but he's quiet now. Calm. I can feel him, but he's not fighting me. He's just there, present, but not violent. He was never violent, I said. He was lonely. There's a difference. We sat there in the library, surrounded by his mother's books, and for the first time since arriving at this castle, I felt like I was seeing the complete picture. Not Lindia, the polite host. Not the white wolf savior. Not even the Alpha King. Just a man who'd been broken in different ways than me, trying to figure out how to be whole. Your week is half over, Lindia said eventually. Do you still want to stay? I thought about my answer carefully. About what staying meant. About what leaving would cost. Yes, I said finally. But on one condition. Name it. Stop hiding from me. No more secrets. No more carefully curated conversations where you pretend everything is fine. If you want me here, I want all of you. The king, the wolf, the monster, all of it. That's a lot to ask, Lindia said quietly. You asked me to trust you, I countered. I'm asking you to trust me back. Think you can do that? Another silence. Then his hand found mine, linking our fingers together. I can try, he said. Then we'll figure it out together. The next 3 days were different. Lindia stopped leaving at sunset. Instead, we'd share dinner, real dinner, not the brief breakfasts we'd managed before, and then move to the library, where he'd read aloud from books I'd already finished, just so I could hear his voice bring the words to life. He told me about his childhood, about a mother who'd refused to let blindness define her, who'd ruled as queen with her mate until illness took her, about a father who'd loved them both fiercely but died in a border dispute when Lindia was barely 20, about inheriting a throne he'd never felt ready for. The curse started 2 years into my rule, he explained one evening, his voice quiet. I thought it was stress at first. The dreams where I'd wake up somewhere else, covered in blood. Then one night, my head guard found me in the monster form standing over a dead servant. I don't remember killing him. I don't remember shifting. I just woke up to horror. What did you do? Covered it up, Lindia admitted. Blamed it on a rogue wolf attack. Gave the servant's family compensation. And I started researching, trying to understand what was happening to me. And I found references to something called a fractured alpha. It's rare happens when an alpha experiences trauma they can't process. The wolf splits, trying to contain the things the human can't handle, creates a secondary form to hold all the rage and pain and fear. So the monster is. Every terrible thing I've ever felt and refused to acknowledge, Lindia said. Every moment of grief I didn't let myself have. Every fear I pushed down because kings aren't supposed to be afraid. 3 years of ruling alone, making decisions that cost lives, holding myself together with willpower and duty until something finally broke. I reached for his hand, finding it easily now that I'd memorized his tells, the way he breathed, the small movements he made. And you thought isolation was the answer. I thought I was protecting people, he said. Better one monster alone in a castle than a monster sitting on a throne, making decisions that affect thousands. Except you're not a monster, I said firmly. You're a man dealing with trauma in the only way you know how. And that way is not great, but it's not monstrous either. Lindia laughed, tired, but genuine. You say that like it's simple. It's not simple. We fell into comfortable silence, broken only by the crackle of the fireplace. I was learning to read his silences. This one felt contemplative, like he was working through something difficult. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Always. Why did you follow the Howl? Really? You said you recognized loneliness. But there's more to it than that. I can feel it. I considered deflecting, then remembered my condition. No more secrets. Because I wanted someone to see me, I admitted. Not the blind Omega everyone pitied. Not Gray's broken daughter. Just me. Morgan. And that howl, it sounded like someone who understood what it meant to be invisible. I thought if I could find whoever was making that sound, maybe they'd see me in return. I do see you, Lindia said softly. Morgan, these past days talking with you, being honest with you, it's the most seen I've felt in years. Maybe ever. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Even with the monster? Especially with the monster, he said. You didn't run. You didn't scream. You touched him and told him he deserved to exist. Do you have any idea what that meant? What it still means. About as much as it meant when you saved me from the blizzard, I said. When you gave me your mother's library. When you spent hours as the wolf just keeping me company because you understood I needed it. So we're even then. I don't think this is about keeping score, I said. I think this is about two broken people accidentally finding exactly what they needed. Lindia was quiet for a long moment. Then, your week is almost up. Tomorrow is the last day. My stomach dropped. I'd been trying not to think about that. I know. Will you stay? The question was careful, vulnerable. Not because you feel obligated, not because you're afraid to leave, but because you want to. Will you stay with me? There were 1,000 practical reasons to say no. He was the Alpha King. I was a cast-off Omega. He had a curse he barely understood. I had a pack who'd exiled me. This castle was isolated, he was complicated, and nothing about this situation was normal or safe or wise. But wisdom had never kept me warm through a blizzard. Yes, I said, I'll stay. I heard Lindia's breath catch. You mean it? I mean it, I confirmed. On one more condition. Another condition? But his voice was smiling. Stop calling him the monster, I said. The other form. Give him a name. Make him a person, not a curse. Morgan, if you want me to stay, if you want to heal, you have to stop treating part of yourself like the enemy. Name him. Acknowledge him. Let him exist as something other than your shame. Silence. Long and waited. Then, shadow, Lindia said quietly. When I was young and afraid of the dark, my mother told me that shadows only exist because there's light somewhere, that you can't have one without the other. I'll call him Shadow. That's perfect, I whispered. You're changing everything, Lindia said, wonder in his voice. You've been here a week and you're changing everything. You changed everything first, I pointed out. The moment you howled into that storm. I'm glad I did, he said. I'm so glad I did. His hand was still holding mine, and I realized this was the most I'd been touched in years. Not in a sexual way, not even particularly romantically. Just held, connected, seen. Lindia? I said softly. Yes. Thank you for being lonely enough to howl. He laughed, the sound breaking slightly. Thank you for being brave enough to follow. We stayed like that until the fire burned low, hands linked, the library quiet around us, two broken pieces that had somehow found a way to fit. And in the darkest corner of the room, where shadows gathered thickest, I could have sworn I felt something watching. Not threatening, not violent, just grateful that someone finally had given him a name. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. The next 2 weeks passed in a rhythm I'd never known before, comfortable, almost domestic, punctuated by small discoveries that felt monumental. I learned that Lindia sang while cooking, off-key and unself-conscious, old ballads his mother had taught him. I learned that Shadow emerged most often in the late afternoon, drawn out by exhaustion or stress. But that with me present, he remained calm, docile even. I learned that the castle itself responded to intention doors opening when you needed them to. The temperature adjusting to comfort. Meals appearing that somehow matched exactly what you were craving. It's keyed to the royal bloodline, Lindia explained one morning over breakfast. My ancestors built this place as a true sanctuary. Somewhere the ruling alpha could come to rest, to heal, to be vulnerable without fear. The magic reads need and responds. Must be nice, I said wryly. My pack's territory had a leaky roof and aggressive squirrels. He laughed. And I was learning to catalog his laughs. This one was the surprised kind, the one that said I'd caught him off guard in a good way. But beneath the comfortable routine, I could feel something building. A tension Lindia carried in his shoulders, in the careful way he chose his words sometimes, in how Shadow had started emerging more frequently, agitated and restless. On the 17th day, I finally asked about it. We were in the library, me reading while Lindia supposedly worked on correspondence, though I could tell from his breathing he was just staring at the papers. What's wrong? I said, setting my book aside. Nothing's wrong. Lindia. A sigh. I can't hide anything from you, can I? Not really. So you might as well just tell me. More silence. Then, there's a summons. From the capital. The Council of Alphas is demanding I return for the winter convocation. It's in 3 days. My stomach dropped. Can you refuse? Technically? Yes. Practically? No. If I don't attend, they'll assume I'm unfit to rule. They'll start succession proceedings, install one of my cousins, and he stopped. And they'll come here. To verify I'm alive, to witness my condition. The sanctuary will be compromised. So you have to go. I have to go, he confirmed. For at least a week, maybe 2. Face the council, reassure them I'm still capable of ruling, deal with whatever political fires have started in my absence. That's good though, isn't it? I said, trying to sound encouraging despite the dread pooling in my chest. Proof that you can manage both the kingdom and the curse. That you're not as broken as you feared. Morgan. His voice was strained. I'm not worried about the council. Then what? I'm worried about leaving you. The words hung in the air between us, weighted with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to examine. I'll be fine, I said automatically. I've survived this long alone. I can manage a couple weeks in a magical castle that literally anticipates my needs. That's not, Lindia made a frustrated sound. I don't want to leave you. These past weeks, having you here, being able to talk to someone, to be myself, all of myself, including Shadow, it's been the most peace I've had in 3 years. The thought of going back to that world, to being King Lindia who has to perform perfection while hiding half of who he is, he trailed off. I don't know if I can do it anymore. I stood, using the furniture to navigate toward where his voice had come from. My hands found his shoulders, tense under my touch. Then don't perform. I said simply, be yourself. You've spent 3 years hiding because you thought the truth would destroy you. But maybe the truth is actually what saves you. You're suggesting I tell the Council of Alphas that I'm fractured. That I have an unstable secondary form that killed someone. Morgan. They'd remove me immediately, probably exile me, or worse. Or maybe they'd understand. I countered. How many of them do you think are perfectly whole? How many are hiding their own fractures behind crowns and authority? That's not how power works. No, that's exactly how power works, I interrupted. The strongest packs I ever heard about weren't the ones with the biggest alphas. They were the ones where the alpha admitted weakness, and the pack supported them anyway. Strength through truth, not through pretending. Lindia's hands came up to cover mine on his shoulders. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's terrifying, but it's better than the alternative. And what's the alternative? Going back to howling alone in a castle, I said softly. Hiding from the world until the isolation breaks you worse than any curse could. He turned under my hands, and suddenly we were very close, his breath warm on my face. Come with me, he said suddenly. What? And stand. To the capital. Come with me. I'll tell them I've found my mate. That you're the reason I've been in seclusion. They'll have to accept it. And you'll be there. And maybe I can do this if you're there. My heart was hammering. Lindia, I'm not, we haven't. I know, he said quickly. I know we haven't discussed anything like that. I'm not asking you to be my mate. Not really. Just pretend. For the council, let me introduce you as someone important, someone who explains my absence, and in return I'll give you status, protection. You'll never have to worry about being cast out again. It was tempting, terrifyingly tempting, but something about it felt wrong. You want me to lie, I said carefully. To pretend we're something we're not, so the council doesn't ask harder questions. I want you with me, Lindia said, and there was desperation in his voice now. I want Morgan, please. I can't do this alone anymore. I can't go back to pretending everything is fine when you're the only person who's ever seen me as something other than a king or a monster. Please. What about Shadow? I asked. If we're in the capital, surrounded by people, what happens when he emerges? You can't shift in front of the council. I'll manage it, Lindia said firmly. I've been stable with you here. Shadow is calm when you're near. If you come with me, I can control it. I know I can, but that was the problem, wasn't it? He was making me responsible for his stability, making me the cage that kept Shadow contained. No, I said quietly. What? I stepped back, breaking the contact between us. No, I won't go with you. And I won't pretend to be your mate to make the council more comfortable. Morgan, listen to me, I said, my voice firm despite the way my chest was aching. You need to face the council as yourself. Not with me as a buffer. You need to stand in front of them and say, I'm fractured, and I'm dealing with it, and I'm still your king. Otherwise, you're just trading one cage for another. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You're afraid. You're terrified that if they see the real you, they'll reject you. Just like my pack rejected me. But Lindia, you're the Alpha King. You have power I'll never have. If you can't be honest about who you are, what hope is there for anyone else? That's not fair. None of this is fair. The words burst out of me, sharp with frustration and fear, and something that felt dangerously close to heartbreak. It's not fair that you're fractured. It's not fair that I'm blind and barren. It's not fair that we're both so fucking broken that we found each other by accident in a blizzard. But that doesn't mean we get to hide from the truth. Silence. The kind that feels like fractures spreading through ice. So you won't come, Lindia said finally, his voice flat. I'll be here when you get back, I said. I promised I'd stay, and I meant it. But I won't enable you hiding anymore. You have to do this part yourself. I see. He stood, and I heard him gathering papers, movements sharp and precise. I should go pack. The journey takes 2 days. I'll need to leave tomorrow morning. Lindia, thank you for your honesty, he said, formal now, distant. I appreciate your principles. If you'll excuse me. He left the library before I could respond, his footsteps echoing too loud in the sudden quiet. I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking. I'd done the right thing. I knew I'd done the right thing. So why did it feel like I'd just made the worst mistake of my life? That night, there was no howl at moonrise. I waited in my room, listening, but the castle remained silent, except for the wind outside. Lindia didn't come to dinner. The magical castle provided food in my room, but I barely touched it. Around midnight I heard it, the sound of claws on stone, moving past my door, shadow pacing the corridors. I got up, wrapping my robe around myself, and opened the door. "Shadow?" I called softly. The pacing stopped. Then heavy footsteps coming closer. The massive form of Shadow emerged from the darkness, and I felt his presence fill the hallway. "He's angry," I said. "Lindia, he's angry at me." Shadow made a sound, not agreement or disagreement, just acknowledgement. "I hurt him," I continued, "by refusing to go, by forcing him to face the council alone. But Shadow, I couldn't be the thing that keeps you contained. Do you understand? If he's only stable because I'm there, then he's not really stable. He's just dependent." Shadow moved closer, and I felt his massive head press against my chest. Not seeking comfort, offering it. "You're worried about him too," I realized. "About what happens when he goes back to the capital. Whether he can handle it without." I trailed off. "Without us." A rumble. "Definitely." Agreement. "He's stronger than he thinks," I said, my fingers finding the rough fur, the too many ridges of Shadow's skull. "Both of you are. You survived 3 years alone. You can survive 2 weeks surrounded by people." But Shadow's body language suggested he wasn't convinced. We stood like that for a long time. Blind Omega and Fractured Monster, both worried about the man we'd somehow come to care about. "Take care of him," I whispered finally. "When he's in the capital, when he's scared or overwhelmed, remind him he's not alone. Even if I'm not there, he has you. He's always had you." Shadow rumbled again, and this time it sounded almost like a promise. Then he pulled back, and I heard the shift gentler now, more controlled. Within moments, Lindia was standing in front of me, breathing hard. "He came to find you," Lindia said quietly. "I was trying to stay away, trying to be angry. But Shadow, he needed to see you were all right." "I'm fine," I said. "Are you?" "No." The honesty was raw. "I'm terrified. Of the council. Of leaving you. Of failing. But you're right. I have to do this myself. I wish I didn't have to." "I know," I whispered. "I wish you didn't have to either." We stood in the hallway, not touching, the space between us full of things neither of us knew how to say. "When I get back," Lindia said finally, "we need to talk. About what this is. About what we are to each other. Because Morgan, I don't think I can keep pretending you're just a guest anymore." My heart stuttered. "What am I then?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know you're important. More important than anyone's been in a very long time. And I know that leaving you feels wrong in ways I don't have words for. Then come back," I said simply. "Face the council, do what you need to do, and come back. We'll figure out the rest together. Promise?" His voice was small, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard. "Promise," I said. "I'll be right here, reading your mother's books, and probably annoying the castle with requests for weird food combinations. You're not getting rid of me that easily." He laughed, shaky, but real. "Thank you. For pushing me. For being honest even when it hurt." "That's what we do," I said. "We tell each other the truth. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard," he agreed. He left before dawn the next morning. I heard him moving through the castle, quiet so as not to wake me. But I was already awake. I stayed in my room though, giving him the space to leave without another painful goodbye. Just before I heard the main door close, a howl echoed through the castle, long and lonely and full of promise. I howled back, not with a wolf's voice, but with my own. A sound I'd never made before, pulled from somewhere deep in my chest where Omega instincts lived. The answering howl was triumphant. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the castle with nothing but books and memories and the ghost of white fur in my hands. 2 weeks, I told myself. Just 2 weeks. I could survive 2 weeks. But as the silence settled around me, as the castle tried and failed to anticipate the ache in my chest, I wasn't entirely sure I believed it. Chapter 7, The Exile and the Summons. The first 3 days without Lindia were bearable. I read. I explored more of the castle, mapping new corridors with my hands and feet, discovering rooms I hadn't known existed, a conservatory where plants grew in impossible profusion, a music room with instruments that hummed when I passed them, a tower observatory where the wind sang through careful architectural gaps. The castle magic tried its best. Meals appeared exactly when I was hungry. The temperature stayed perfect. Books I'd been thinking about reading would appear on my favorite chair, already open to the first page. But magic couldn't provide what I actually needed: conversation, presence, the sound of someone else breathing in the next room. By the 4th day, I was talking to myself. By the 7th, I was talking to Shadow even though he was with Lindia at the capital. Even though I knew he couldn't hear me, I'd stand in the library and update him on what I'd read, what I'd discovered. How much I missed them both. Today I found a room full of maps, I told the empty air. Embossed maps, raised surfaces so I could trace borders and rivers and mountain ranges. Your mother must have commissioned them. She was brilliant, Shadow. You would have liked her. Silence answered, as it always did. On the 9th day, something changed. I woke to wrongness, not a sound or a smell, but the sensation of the castle's magic flickering, like a candle flame guttering in wind. The temperature dropped sharply, then spiked too hot. When I reached for the breakfast that should have appeared, my hand found empty air. "Hello?" I called out, uneasy. "Is someone there?" No answer. But the wrongness intensified, spreading through the castle like ice across water. Then I heard it, distant but unmistakable. Voices, multiple voices raised in argument. The castle had visitors. My heart hammered as I moved carefully out of my room, following the sounds. The castle tried to help, doorways opening in my path, subtle changes in air pressure guiding me toward the main hall. But its magic felt weak, distracted. The voices grew clearer as I approached. Absolutely unacceptable. 3 years of shirking responsibility. The king's private affairs are his own. Not when those affairs impact the entire northern territories. We have a right to know. I stopped at the top of the grand staircase, hidden in the shadows, listening. "Search every room," a commanding female voice said. "If he's hidden something here, we need to know what it is. And find the Omega, the one the servants at the capital mentioned. If she exists, she's evidence of the king's instability." Omega. They were talking about me. "Lady Morgana, surely this is excessive," a male voice protested, older, tired. The king explained his absence. He needed time to mourn. To what? Hide? Morgana's voice dripped scorn. King Lindia arrives at the convocation looking half wild, barely coherent, and when questioned about his 3-year absence, he spins some story about personal reflection and healing. And we're supposed to simply accept that? He seemed perfectly in control during the sessions. He walked out of the final council meeting. Morgana snapped. Walked out without explanation, shifted into that massive white wolf, and disappeared. That's not control. That's a fracturing alpha having a breakdown. And if he's been hiding here with some Omega he thinks can stabilize him. She paused. We need to know what we're dealing with. My blood ran cold. Lindia had walked out? Why hadn't he come back here? Where was he? Spread out, Morgana commanded. Find whatever he's hiding. I heard footsteps. Multiple people moving through the castle. The magic flickered again, trying to resist them, but whatever authority Morgana carried, it was enough to override the sanctuary's protections. I had to hide. Had to think. But where could I go that they wouldn't find me? The library, I thought desperately. It was massive, full of alcoves and shadowed corners. If I could reach it. My lady. A new voice, young and excited. I found something. A room, clearly lived in recently. Women's clothes, braille books. The Omega exists. No. Excellent, Morgana purred. Find her. Bring her to me. I want to know exactly what hold she has over our king. I ran. Years of navigating blind gave me advantage here. I knew this castle had memorized its rhythms and patterns. I flew down corridors, taking turns I'd mapped, moving toward the library because it was the only place big enough to hide properly. Behind me, I heard pursuit. Multiple sets of footsteps. Wolves with better hearing than any human, tracking my panicked breathing and racing heartbeat. I burst into the library, my hands finding shelves, using them to navigate deeper into the massive space. There, the reading corner, the alcove behind it, the narrow space between shelf and wall where I'd once wedged myself while reading. I pressed into the gap, making myself as small as possible, controlling my breathing the way I'd learned during childhood games of hide and seek. The footsteps entered the library. "She's in here," someone said. "I can smell her." Omega scent, fresh. "Find her," Morgana ordered. "And be gentle. We're not monsters. We're simply concerned parties." The lie was obvious, even to me. Whatever Morgana wanted, it wasn't gentle conversation. They searched systematically, footsteps moving through the aisles, hands pulling books from shelves, checking behind furniture, getting closer. I pressed harder against the wall, praying the shadows were deep enough, that the castle's flickering magic would hide me somehow. Got her. Hands grabbed me, yanking me out of the hiding spot. I struggled instinctively, but the grip was iron strong, alpha dominant, impossible to break. "Let me go," I gasped. "Bring her here," Morgana commanded. I was dragged, there was no other word for it, across the library. They deposited me in a chair, and I felt Morgana's presence settle directly in front of me. Her scent was all dominance and cold calculation. "So," she said, her voice deceptively pleasant, "you're the mystery Omega, the one our king has been hiding." I lifted my chin, refusing to show fear even though my heart was hammering. "I'm not hiding, I'm a guest." "A guest," Morgana laughed. "Is that what he told you? How charming. Tell me, little Omega, what exactly is your relationship with King Lindia?" "That's none of your business." A hand struck my face, not hard enough to seriously hurt, but sharp enough to shock. "You will speak respectfully to the council's representative," Morgana said coldly. "Now, answer the question. What are you to the king?" I touched my stinging cheek, fury rising. "A friend. Someone who understands him. Someone who thinks she can influence royal policy through the Omega bond," Morgana interrupted. "Yes, we've seen this before. Weak Omegas latching onto powerful alphas, pretending affection, hoping for status and protection. It's not like that, isn't it?" Morgana leaned closer. "You're blind, Baron. From the reports, cast out by your own pack, and suddenly you're living in the royal sanctuary, surrounded by luxury, with the king so distracted by your presence that he abandons his duties? That's not friendship, Omega. That's manipulation. I never asked him for anything." The words burst out, desperate and true. "He saved me. I was dying in a blizzard, and he saved me. And I stayed because he was lonely, because I understood what it meant to be alone." "How touching," Morgana said dryly. "And in exchange for this charitable companionship, you get a castle, resources, and the ear of the most powerful wolf in the territories. Quite the bargain." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Morgana interrupted. "You're a liability, a distraction. The king walked out of a crucial council meeting because of you. He shifted in front of visiting dignitaries because he was so unstable. He shifted because you wouldn't listen to him," I shouted, fear giving way to rage. "Because he tried to be honest, and you, all of you wanted him to be perfect instead of real. You wanted King Lindia who performs stability, not Lindia who's actually dealing with." I stopped myself, but too late. "Dealing with what?" Morgana's voice sharpened. "What exactly is our king dealing with, little Omega? What secrets have you learned in your time here?" I pressed my lips together, refusing to answer. "Bind her," Morgana ordered. "We're taking her back to the capital. If the king cares so much about this Omega, he can explain to the full council exactly why he's been hiding her. And if he can't provide satisfactory answers..." She paused. "Well, the council will make decisions accordingly." "You can't," I started, but hands were already wrapping cord around my wrists, tight enough to hurt. "I absolutely can," Morgana said. "You're on royal property, associated with a king who's showing signs of severe instability. The council has every right to investigate. Be grateful we're being civilized about this." They hauled me to my feet, and I struggled until someone's hand locked around the back of my neck, a dominance hold that made my Omega instincts scream submission. "Stop fighting," the guard holding me said, not unkindly. "You'll only make this harder." "The king will come for me," I gasped, When he finds out what you've done, the king, Morgana said coldly, is in no position to make demands. And if he tries? Well, that will tell us everything we need to know about his fitness to rule, won't it? They dragged me out of the library, out of the castle, into cold afternoon air that bit at my face. I heard horses, smelled leather and steel. A hunting party, I realized. They'd come prepared to capture and contain. Put her in the carriage, Morgana commanded. And someone ride ahead. Tell the council we found the king's secret. They'll want to convene immediately. As they lifted me into the carriage, as the door slammed shut and wheels began to roll, I sent out a desperate, wordless prayer to any deity listening. Lindia, Shadow, I need you. Please, come find me. Chapter 8. The Alpha King's Choice. The capital was noise. After weeks in the quiet sanctuary of the castle, the assault of sound was almost physical. Crowds shouting, merchants hawking, metal clanging, wolves snarling in dominance displays. Even through the carriage walls, even with my limited senses, I could feel the press of too many people, too many scents, too much chaos. The carriage stopped with a jerk that sent me sliding across the bench. My bound hands made it impossible to catch myself properly, and I hit the wall with my shoulder, pain flaring. Out, Morgana commanded from outside. Hands grabbed me again, different guards, I thought, from the scent. They were rougher than the ones at the castle, yanking me down the carriage steps without bothering to guide my feet. I stumbled, nearly fell, and would have if someone hadn't caught my arm. Easy, a male voice said quietly. I've got you. How kind, Morgana said with acid sweetness. Captain Davos always did have a soft spot for wounded things. Do try not to let sympathy cloud your judgment. Just following protocol, my lady, Davos replied, his grip on my arm firm but not cruel. All prisoners are to be treated with basic dignity. Prisoner, I whispered. I'm a prisoner? You're a person of interest in a matter of royal stability, Morgana corrected. Slightly different category, though the distinction may be academic depending on what the council decides. They marched me forward, Davos guiding me through what felt like a massive courtyard, then up stone steps, through doors that groaned on ancient hinges. The air changed cooler, staler, carrying the weight of old stone and older power. The council hall, I realized. They were taking me to the actual council hall. The king? I heard someone ask ahead. Has he been informed? Not yet, Morgana replied. We'll present the Omega first. Let the council see what we've found. Then we'll summon King Lindia and watch his reaction. My lady, this feels like proper governance, Morgana interrupted. The king has been unstable. We have evidence of why. Now we assess and make informed decisions. Unless you'd prefer we simply take his word that everything is fine? Silence. Apparently, no one preferred that. We entered a space that echoed differently massive, I thought, with high ceilings and hard surfaces. I could hear breathing, multiple people already present. The council members, presumably. Members of the council, Morgana announced, her voice ringing with authority. I present to you the source of King Lindia's 3-year absence, an Omega he's been hiding in the royal sanctuary. Murmurs rippled through the space. Shock, disapproval, curiosity. Her name is Morgan Grey, Morgana continued. Cast out by her own pack for being blind and barren. Found by the king during his retreat. Kept in the sanctuary ever since. And gentlemen, he walked out of our final session because she wasn't there. He's become dependent, compromised. That's not true, I shouted, finding my voice. He left because you wouldn't listen. Silence the Omega, someone commanded. A hand clamped over my mouth, cutting off my words. I struggled, but the dominance hold on my neck tightened, and my Omega instincts forced me still. Let her speak, a new voice said, older, carrying the weight of authority that even Morgana had to respect. If we're going to judge the king based on her presence, we should at least hear what she has to say. The hand left my mouth. I gasped, trying to organize my thoughts. Thank you, Elder Rothgar, Morgana said, though her tone suggested she wasn't thankful at all. Very well. Omega, explain yourself. What is your relationship with King Lindia? Every eye in the room was on me. I could feel the weight of their attention, their judgment, their predetermined conclusions. They'd already decided I was a liability. Already decided Lindia was compromised. I could lie, play the helpless Omega, claim I'd manipulated nothing, beg for mercy, or I could tell them the truth. The same truth I'd forced Lindia to face. My relationship with King Lindia, I said slowly, choosing each word carefully, is that I see him, not the king, not the performance. I see Lindia, the man who's been alone so long he howled at blizzards just to break the silence. The man who's been carrying the weight of this kingdom while simultaneously believing he's not worthy of it. The man who fractured under pressure you all helped create. Shocked silence. You dare, Morgana started. I dare, I interrupted. Because someone needs to. You're all so busy judging whether he's fit to rule that you haven't asked why he fractured in the first place. You haven't asked what it costs to make every decision alone, to have no one to be vulnerable with, to perform perfection while drowning inside. The king has advisors, someone protested. The king has politicians, I corrected. People who want things from him. People who see him as a means to power, to resources, to advancement. When was the last time any of you asked how he was? Not how the kingdom was. Not what policies he planned, how he, the person, was doing. More silence. Uncomfortable this time. The Omega makes interesting points, Elder Rothgar said thoughtfully. Though it doesn't address the core question. Is King Lindia's attachment to her affecting his judgment? His attachment to me, I said carefully, is teaching him that being fractured doesn't mean being broken. That having weaknesses doesn't disqualify you from strength. That real leadership isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity. Pretty philosophy, Morgana said coldly. But it doesn't change facts. The king is unstable. He shifted in public. He walked out of a council session. And now we discover he's been hiding a blind Baron Omega in the royal sanctuary for weeks. These are not the actions of a stable ruler. No, I agreed. They're the actions of someone finally trying to heal. By abandoning his duties. By learning, he doesn't have to be alone. The words burst out of me, passionate and desperate. You want a king who makes good decisions? Give him space to be human. You want a king who doesn't fracture? Stop forcing him to pretend fractures don't exist. Enough, Morgana commanded. This Omega has clearly been compromised by whatever attachment she's formed. Her testimony is worthless. I move that we remove her from the capital immediately, prohibit any further contact with King Lindia, and begin formal proceedings to assess his fitness too. The doors to the council hall exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. Wood splintering, hinges screaming, the crack of impact echoing through the massive space. And through the destruction walked Lindia. Except it wasn't just Lindia. He was shifting, as he moved not fully but partially. His eyes glowed wolf gold, his hands bore claws, his teeth were too sharp for human. He looked like something between man and beast, held in that liminal space by sheer force of will. And behind him, like a living shadow, prowled Shadow, the massive fractured form I'd touched in the library. The monster Lindia had spent 3 years hiding. Now fully manifested. Visible to everyone. Undeniable. The council erupted into chaos. Guards! Morgana shrieked. Contain them. But Lindia's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Touch her, and I will show you what a truly fractured alpha can do. The threat wasn't empty. Power rolled off him in waves, not just alpha dominance, but something more. Something primal. Shadow growled, and the sound made the stone walls vibrate. King Lindia, Elder Rothgar said, struggling to maintain composure. This display is overdue, Lindia interrupted. You want to know why I left? Why I spent 3 years in isolation? Look at him. He gestured to Shadow. This is my fracture. My rage. My pain. Every decision that cost lives. Every moment of grief I suppressed. Every fear I couldn't acknowledge. He is all of it, given form. The council stared, horrified fascination on every face. 3 years ago, in this form I killed someone, Lindia continued, his voice steady despite the partial shift. One of my own guards. I didn't mean to. I didn't remember doing it. But it happened. And I realized I was dangerous. Not just to myself, but to everyone around me. Then you should have abdicated. Someone started. I should have asked for help. Lindia roared, and Shadow roared with him, the dual voices shaking the hall. I should have stood before this council and said, I'm fractured, and I need support. But I didn't. Because I knew what you'd say. That fractured alphas can't lead. That weakness is failure. That perfection is the only acceptable standard. He moved through the council, wolves scattering before him, until he reached me. His clawed hands carefully cut the bonds on my wrists, gentle despite their lethal appearance. So I hid, he continued, his voice softer now. I isolated. I convinced myself that being alone was safer than being vulnerable, and I would have died in that isolation not physically, but in every way that matters if she hadn't followed a Howl into a blizzard. His hand found mine, linking our fingers. Morgan Gray, Lindia said, addressing the council but looking at me or where he thought I was, his eyes still glowing gold. Blind Omega, cast out by her pack, worthless by every metric you people use to measure value. She walked into a storm following loneliness, offered her throat to what she thought was a predator, and somehow saw past every mask I wore to the truth underneath. Shadow moved closer, pressing against both of us, protecting us. Or maybe just being part of this moment. She taught me, Lindia said, that fracture isn't failure, that Shadow isn't my enemy, he's my truth. That being vulnerable doesn't make you weak, it makes you honest. And honesty is the only foundation strong enough to build real leadership on. He turned to face the council fully, and his voice hardened. So here's my honesty. I'm fractured. I have a secondary form that I'm still learning to integrate. I will probably struggle with this for the rest of my life. And if that disqualifies me from ruling, then remove me. But know that whoever you put in my place will have their own fractures, their own shadows. The only difference is they'll hide them better. And hiding fractures is exactly what creates the kind of king who breaks. Silence. Complete absolute silence. Then Elder Rothgar spoke. King Lindia. You're asking us to accept an alpha who admits to being imperfect? I'm asking you to accept an alpha who admits to being real, Lindia corrected. And who's learning, with help, to integrate his fractures instead of hiding from them. And the Omega? Morgana demanded, though her voice had lost its certainty. What is she to you, really? Lindia looked down at me, and even without seeing his face, I felt the weight of his attention. She's the person who taught me that being seen truly seen, fractures and all, is worth the risk of rejection, he said quietly. She's my friend, my companion, someone I trust more than anyone in this room. Is she your mate? Elder Rothgar asked directly. Lindia hesitated. We haven't discussed. Yes, I said clearly, surprising myself as much as everyone else. Lindia's hand tightened on mine. Morgan? Yes, I repeated, more firmly this time. If you're going to stand here and bear your truth, then I'm going to bear mine. I followed your howl because something in me recognized something in you. I stayed because being with you, all of you, including Shadow, feels like coming home for the first time in my life. And if being your mate means standing beside you while you integrate your fractures, means being the person who reminds you that being real is better than being perfect, means facing councils and kingdoms and whatever else comes, then yes, I'm your mate. I heard his breath catch. You mean it. I mean it, I confirmed. Shadow rumbled, not a growl this time, but something almost like laughter. Or joy. Well, Elder Rothgar said dryly. That's rather definitive. Morgana made a disgusted sound. This is absurd. The king and a blind Omega? What kind of? The kind of partnership built on truth, Lindia interrupted. Which is more than most royal pairings can claim. Now, council. I've been honest with you. Brutally so. What's your decision? Do I remain your king? Or do you want someone who'll go back to hiding their fractures and pretending everything is fine? The council members looked at each other. Uncertain. Uncomfortable. Faced with a choice they'd never expected to make. Finally, Elder Rothgar spoke. I move that King Lindia retain his position, with the understanding that he submit to regular council meetings in person, to discuss both kingdom matters and his personal integration process. Transparency, as he says, should be our foundation. Seconded, another voice said. Opposed? Morgana demanded. Silence. Even those who looked uncomfortable didn't speak up. Then it's settled, Elder Hrothgar said. King Lyndia remains. Lady Morgana, I believe you owe both the king and his mate an apology. I will not. You kidnapped and bound an Omega under royal protection, Elder Hrothgar said flatly. You destroyed sanctuary property. You attempted to undermine the king through political theater. Apologize. Or face charges. Morgana's fury was palpable, but she managed. My apologies. To both of you. It was the least sincere apology I'd ever heard, but it was something. Accepted, Lyndia said coldly. Now get out. All of you. I need to speak with my mate privately. The council filed out. Whispers following them like ghosts. Only Elder Hrothgar paused at the door. King Lyndia, he said quietly. For what it's worth, your mother would be proud. She always said true strength was in vulnerability. Thank you, Elder, Lyndia replied, his voice thick. Then we were alone. Lyndia, Shadow, and me. In a council hall full of splintered doors and broken expectations. Lyndia's shift reversed slowly, painfully. By the time he was fully human again, he was leaning heavily on me, exhausted. That, he gasped, was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. You were incredible, I said, my arms around him. Holding him up, I destroyed the council hall doors. They were ugly anyway. He laughed, shaky and relieved and somehow still surprised. You said yes. When Elder Hrothgar asked if you were my mate, you said yes. I did, I confirmed. Was that all right? I know we haven't discussed it properly and I didn't mean to presume. All right? Lyndia pulled back enough to cup my face in his hands. Morgan, it was your... He stopped, took a breath. I was going to ask you properly. With flowers and poetry and all the traditional courtship rituals. But standing here, after everything, all I want to know is, did you mean it? Really mean it? I meant it, I said softly. Every word. You're my mate, Lyndia. You and Shadow both. If you'll have me. If I'll. He made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Morgan Gray. I'd be honored. Terrified. And completely unworthy, but honored. You're not unworthy, I said firmly. And we'll figure out the terrified part together. Shadow rumbled his agreement, pressing against both of us. So, Lyndia said, still holding my face like he couldn't quite believe I was real. What happens now? Now, I said, we go home. Back to the sanctuary, back to the library, and the quiet, and the space to just be. And we start building a life that's real, instead of perfect. That sounds... His voice broke. That sounds like everything I didn't know I needed. Good, I whispered. Because you're stuck with me now. Fractured alpha, monstrous shadow, and all. He kissed me, then our first kiss. There in the ruined council hall, with Shadow rumbling contentedly beside us and the future uncertain but finally real. And when we pulled apart, I could have sworn I heard the castle's magic singing approval all the way from the sanctuary, calling us home, where we belonged. Epilogue. 3 months later. The library had become our sanctuary within the sanctuary. I was reading some philosophical treatise on the nature of truth that would have bored me to tears a year ago but now felt relevant in ways I couldn't have imagined. Lyndia was working on correspondence at the desk, muttering occasionally about trade agreements and border disputes. And Shadow was sprawled across both of us, massive and content, his presence no longer a source of fear but of comfort. Integration, the healers called it. The process of accepting Shadow not as an enemy but as part of Lyndia's whole self. It wasn't easy. There were still days when Shadow emerged angry or frightened, when Lyndia struggled with controlling the shift. But those days were fewer now. Manageable. And I was learning too. Learning that being someone's mate didn't mean fixing them. It meant standing beside them while they fixed themselves. It meant being the voice that reminded them they were worth the effort when the work got hard. Morgan? Lyndia said suddenly. There's a letter here. From your sister. My hand stilled on the braille page. Sarah? She's asking to visit, Lyndia said carefully. Says she heard you'd mated the Alpha King. Wants to. Reconnect. I thought about that, about the sister who'd never quite known what to do with me, who'd probably felt relief when I left, about the pack that had cast me out. What do you think? Lindia asked. I think, I said slowly, that I'm not the same person who left Grey Pack, and maybe Sarah isn't the same person who watched me go. So, yes, let her visit. Let's see what happens when she meets who I've become, who you've always been. Lindia corrected gently. You just found people who could see it. Shadow rumbled agreement. We found each other, I said. Broken pieces that somehow fit. Not broken, Lindia said, moving from the desk to join Shadow and me. Fractured. There's a difference. Is there? Broken means unfixable, he explained, gathering both Shadow and me close. Fractured means cracked but whole, I finished. Damaged but functional, still capable of holding light. Exactly, Lindia whispered against my hair. Still capable of holding light. Outside, snow began to fall, the first of the season. And somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not lonely anymore, just calling. And this time, I knew someone would always howl back.